Thank you, Ginger. And now we will turn it over to Don Colliver to discuss the ASHRAE resources in development. Thank you, Don.
Thank you, Scott. I appreciate you setting this program up. I think it's very important for all of us to get a good feeling for where we are and where we're headed. And thank you, Ginger, for a very high overview or high-level overview of what ASHRAE is doing and what ASHRAE is planning to do. In order to expound a little bit on what Ginger was talking about, I'd like to talk about what some of the resources that ASHRAE is preparing and what kind of time frame that we're working on getting these presented. As co-chair of the task force last year and as vice chair of the task force this year, I feel it's important for us to look at some of the high-level types of activities that are going on. First, and most importantly, I think in the standards development area, is the development of the new ASHRAE, and this is jointly being produced with ICC. And this is evaluating the greenhouse gas and carbon emissions when we're talking about building design, when we're talking about building construction, and then also in operation. What we're doing with the standard is to provide a whole life carbon approach to support the emissions reductions in buildings. Now, we're talking about not only operational carbon, that is the carbon that's used while the building is in operation, but also the embodied carbon, that carbon that is embodied in the materials that go into the building. And this can be very substantial, especially when we're talking about buildings as we move forward, being more energy efficient and reducing the operational carbon. This standard is proposed to establish how to measure and then also verify the greenhouse gas emissions and also the carbon emissions, either through individual buildings or groups of buildings such as campuses. And we're talking about doing this over the entire life cycle of the facility. The purpose of this is to provide persistent, consistent procedures and data. And this is so that they can be referenced by policies such as the laws that we're going to be talking about today in New York City, and also referenced by codes and other standards. And here we're talking about addressing both the new and the existing building performance. So that's our major standard that's being developed. It actually had the first meeting of the committee within the last month, and this is being expedited and is moving along, or will be moving along very quickly, as it is a joint standard between ASHRAE and ICC. So let's move on in the next slide and talk about some of the other sources that are being developed. Ginger mentioned some of the technical resource guides that are being produced, and this is an overview of some of the covers of these guides. So let's go into the next slide as we talk about what these various technical resource guides are going to be encompassing. So let's go to the next slide. As we look at this, we realize that the Resource and Knowledge Hub is key to the whole area, and this is being developed on the website, and a lot of this will be coming up as we roll out the new website in the next few weeks here. And within ASHRAE, there are 4 key things that we are looking at. First of all, as Ginger alluded to, the Society has developed a position document, and that's currently on the website. There are 3 other key pillars of this stool. That is education, and we're in the process of developing some educational courses. A couple of those are being presented at the Society meeting coming up within the next month. We've talked about some of the standards that are existing and some of the standards that are this key standard that is being developed. And then also the society is developing a number of technical tools, and we will be calling these technical resource guides. The first is the Building Decarbonization Retrofit Guide. And the purpose of this is to provide the design engineers with a framework for decarbonizing existing both commercial and multifamily buildings. And in this, we're talking about specific solutions, giving guidance, and also providing some case studies for both of these type of building sectors. The second major guide that we are developing is the heat pump application and operation. We realize that heat pumps are critical to decarbonizing our buildings. And the purpose of this is to develop a guide talking about the techniques and the practices needed to incorporate the various types of heat pump technologies, dealing with buildings in multiple climates, and then also dealing for hot climates, cold climates, and so forth. And as we look at decarbonization and the use of heat pumps and their application and the operation of those. The next guide being developed is related to building performance standards. And here we realize that there are a lot of building performance techniques that are being developed. And so what we're talking about here is providing what is the technical support needed for these performance standards being developed and then also being implemented. Another key technical guide that we're looking at is the Decarbonization of Whole Life Design Guide. This is a big area, and so we have restricted it just to the MEP systems. And the purpose of this is to provide a design guide to minimize the whole life carbon emissions from the MEP systems. The fifth guide that we're talking about is the Hospital Decarbonization Guide. And in this, we're talking about a guide to specifically show how to reduce greenhouse emissions in hospital buildings. These buildings are very energy intensive, and so we have focused in particular on this particular sector. Finally, the last guide that is being developed, and we'll talk in a minute about another one related to this, but the grid interactive buildings for decarbonizations. And what we're talking about here is giving guidance on the techniques and the practices that are needed to enable buildings to maximize the benefits from the grid while still minimizing the carbon impact of the grid and the buildings. So these are guides that are currently being developed. So the logical question is, okay, these sound to be very great. When can I get my hands on them? So let's go to the next slide and let's talk about what our status of those guides are. The first one that's going to be coming out very quickly within the next month or so is the Building Performance Standard. And this technical resource guide has already been developed. It's in the publication sector within ASHRAE, and it should be out in February. Another one that is being developed by the working group, and the Task Force for Building Decarbonization has a number of working groups under the auspices of the task force. And one of those is dealing with the CIBSE TM65. This is developed by CIBSE. Major application is in the UK. However, there are differences between the UK and America. So what we're looking at is developing this embedded carbon calculation methodology and doing this for North America. So this is in development. We have completed our final work statement on that, and it's expected that this guide will be out by August of this year. Another one that is being developed by internally within the task force and the working groups is the Whole Life Carbon Guide for Building Systems. I alluded to that earlier and told what some of the objectives are. That is a major task, and that is expected to be out in October of this year. In addition to these various working group developed guides, we realized that in order to get the guides out in a timely manner, we needed to have these being developed by contractors. The work statement and the approval of these contractor guides is under the auspices of the task force, and the task force is leading the guidance of what's contained in these, but we are having contractors do that. Some of these, the RFP has already been released, and we have actually selected the award of the contract for the Grid Interactive Buildings for Decarbonization, that design and operation resource guide, a major product that is going to be completed by the end of the summer, or approximately in August of this year. The decarbonization of hospital buildings, that work statement has been developed. We are putting the final touches on the RFP, and it will be out soon. We expect that the contractor will be selected in March of this year, and we expect this to be completed because it's a fairly extensive guide. We expect this to be completed in March of next year. The building decarbonization retrofits, and here we're talking about commercial and multifamily buildings, and we realized that there is a need for looking at the existing buildings. If we look at the numbers about the number of buildings that are currently in existence, that will be in existence by 2030 or by 2050, we realize that we must also look at what can we do to retrofit buildings. This resource guide has already been, the work statement has been developed, an RFP has been put out, and it is currently out for bid. And then finally, the heat pump application, and we expect that that one will be out in May of next year. Then discussing about the heat pump application design and operation guide, the work statement has been prepared on this. We see that the RFP will be coming out shortly, and this will be presented in, or will be finalized in July of next year. So these are some of the, is a deep dive into some of the resources that are available. I would suggest that you continue to look at the ASHRAE website, ashrae.org/decarb, to get more information on these as we move forward. So Scott, thank you for the opportunity to tell about some of the things that currently are being done by the Society and some of the resources that we see that are going to be coming out in the next few months. Thank you, folks, and appreciate all that you're doing in New York to help decarbonize our world. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. We really appreciate it. We appreciate your time and your service to ASHRAE. As an ex-president of ASHRAE, your experience, your wisdom of how to get things done in ASHRAE is very important. So thank you for your time. Thank you again to Ginger for sending the taped address. Hopefully in the spring you will be able to give us a keynote in person. What we have now is on the screen. We have the first QR code for Paul Torsellini's presentation. If you could scan that and you can fill that out. So by the time we're done with this presentation, everyone will be all set with their PDH credits. And to with no more delay, I would like to now introduce the first presentation, Decarbonization Fundamentals by Paul Torsellini of National Renewable Energy Laboratory. Paul is an ASHRAE Distinguished Lecturer, 25-year ASHRAE Fellow, and he is an integral member of ASHRAE's leadership and their decarbonization task force. So welcome, Paul. We look forward to hearing you discuss your fundamental decarbonization. Thank you.